Hi.
That was a very dramatic countdown video.
It was. I felt like it was like a good way to bring the tension for people anticipating this first ever broadcast, which is really exciting.
Love it.
So, welcome, Chris, and thanks for being here today. And I'm just kind of, I don't even know why I'm here interviewing you. I'm not officially the one running the Million Tree Pledge, but I'm just a very keen pledger and wanted to kick off this series. But thanks so much for joining.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yeah, it's such a great organization, and I'm honored to be the first one on the show.
I just want to say, like, first, why don't you just give a little bit of a background of who you are, what Growth Animals does, and you know, what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So yes, I'm Chris. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Growth Animals, and Growth Animals is a strategic marketing agency that's been going for about 2.5 years now, and we talk about our purpose being around championing ethical marketing. So the idea that clever marketing can help you grow both your bottom line and your positive impact, and there doesn't need to be a trade-off in that. So we help businesses to do marketing that's helpful and inspiring rather than manipulative or intrusive. And naturally, a lot of the stuff that comes through in that conversation, through the purposes, the comms that people want to talk about, links to great stuff to do with the environment, to do with sustainability. And that's where really the link with Million Tree Pledge comes in, because we as an organization were already members of Ecology. We'd sort of signed up, as many businesses do, to become a sort of climate neutral workforce. And through that and through networking in general, we came to know about the Million Tree Pledge, and hence we are here today.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to come back to the Million Tree Pledge bit, but because I want to understand more about Growth Animals and what you guys do. And so, you know, you've talked about ethical marketing and all that sort of stuff, but what does that actually mean? Because I feel like, you know, we're in the marketing agency, and, you know, our tagline is the no bullshit agency, for the fact that we find that the marketing industry has a lot of bullshit in it. Yeah. So I totally get where you're coming from. So run me through what exactly is ethical marketing and what you do for people.
Yeah, so the no bullshit is such a good way of sort of introducing it, actually. And it stems from the fact that I think any of us who work in the marketing industry know that there is this slightly negative perception of it because of the bullshit factor, because of the fact that it's seen as sometimes being manipulative, to be seen as playing on people's sort of psychological behavioral instincts and stuff like that. And so where the motivation from us, so myself and my co-founder Jen, came from, was that we'd always spent our majority of our careers working for big client-side organizations. And we'd had many occasions in our careers where we'd felt the pressures from shareholders, from owners, to do things as marketeers that we just knew were slightly crossing an ethical line. And so we wanted to therefore help businesses to adopt marketing practices that didn't give them that ick factor, that enabled them to be helpful and inspiring, and do so in a way that they could be confident was also going to help them to grow their bottom line at the same time. Because I think, as you sort of alluded to a bit before, you know, there's almost this perception that marketing only works if it's being manipulative, if it's using these sort of quite sometimes seedy short-term tactics. But, you know, what we're trying to get across is the fact that some of those tactics will give you a short-term hit, perhaps, to your sales, but actually in the long term, it can be damaging to your brand, damaging to the trust that you generate from your consumers. And by doing it the right way, by being helpful, educational, inspiring, all these lovely things, it actually grows much better long-term value, and gets more customers to sort of talk about you in positive ways, to be advocates for you, and therefore grow you over that long term.
So you mentioned some of the things that you said, like they ask you to do things that cross an ethical line. I want to know what some of those things are. Like, let's have some examples. One that you're allowed to say, not going to get into trouble for, that is, obviously.
Exactly. Now, well, the classic one is, trying to sell tickets faster and faster every year. And naturally, one of the key sales spikes of selling tickets is when you can say that you're limited. So doing that scarcity messaging. But the problem with that is it becomes a bit like a drug, and you're always looking for more and more reasons to talk about scarcity. So you're effectively looking for artificial scarcity points in the sales calendar. And so, yeah, we experienced that. There were times when Jen and I looked across each other at a table and just sort of thought, oh, it doesn't quite feel right. So that's one classic example of the motivations that led us down this path.
And I guess, like that's a classic. Like you said, it's, people saying, oh, sold out soon. Or, you see even stores always say there's a closing down sale. And I'm like, 3 years later, the store's still there. So it's like, it's that. I guess it's playing on people's FOMO and all that sort of stuff too. So what would, say, like a ticket sales, someone would want to sell a tickets to event, what would they do in terms of, ethical marketing? What would be the better strategy? Obviously, without giving away all your kind of key secrets to what you guys do, but an example of what would you suggest to someone as a more ethical way of marketing their event?
Yeah, and it's not really giving any way secrets. It's simply, this is kind of how we recommend is the right way to do it. So first and foremost, you've got a long period of a sales window, let's call it, where unless you are going to be using artificial scarcity, you can't talk about scarcity. It's fine to talk about it when you are genuinely down to the last few tickets. And at that point, it's actually quite a helpful message to put across to customers, because they have busy lives and they might have completely forgotten to book that said ticket. And so actually your little nudge at the end of the sales window is quite helpful for them. But for the rest of the time, is about building this narrative, this story about why this event or whatever it might be is interesting to them, is special to them, can sort of make a positive difference in their lives. And doing so with as much as content or storytelling that's going to make them excited about it, so that they buy it for that positive reason that they think it's going to enhance their lives, rather than doing it for the FOMO reason, which is where you're effectively inducing feelings of anxiety in that person.
I feel like, exactly, that's it. Like, it is anxiety, and then you sort of you're more likely going to get buyer's remorse when you do that anyway, exactly, as well. So it's not the right reasons, like you said. But do you see this actually, I feel like, there's some companies are going to be like, right, yes, I didn't realize how bad it was to do this, and be happy that you're alerting them to the fact that it is unethical. But other companies are just going to see this as like, oh, well, they're not doing it anymore, well, we will, and I'll take advantage of the situation. Do you believe that, marketing will change and it'll become less, I guess, I don't know what the correct word is to describe it, but dishonest, and, because it feels dishonest. It feels like a very dishonest industry. Like, what do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm ever the optimist, and I think that we're on part of a slow and long journey whereby hopefully in 30, 40 years, we'll be looking back at this and thinking, gosh, I can't believe that people did those sort of scarcity tactics back then. Because ultimately this is coming from disgruntled consumers. There's a lot of people who talk about the fact that they hate those tickets. Who that you speak to likes the fact that when you go onto a travel site, it's telling you and bombarding you with the fact that there's 15 other people looking at your ticket to go and have a weekend stay in Bognor Regis. No one likes that. It's not a good thing, and it doesn't give a positive feeling around the brand that is sort of pushing that to you. So yes, there will be plenty, I think, who continue to use these tactics for years and years to come, and may even see it as a potential advantage that other people are moving away from it. But that's going to become less and less, and it's almost like the way that you would have, there's always going to be different sort of parts of the market. So, you've got the super premium end of a market, you've got the sort of discount end of the market, and it's going to be like that, rather than, I think, where it is now, where actually the majority of people play in this same area where they're all using the tactics that are a little bit on the sort of shady side.
They definitely are on the shady side. I feel like, and you know, I think people are starting to call it out a little bit more as well now. Like when you see these big ad campaigns coming out, there's a few at the moment. I think people are calling out, like for example, BrewDog on their anti Qatar campaign, but then there's some discrepancies about like what their actual perspective is on it. You know, and there's a lot of people who are creating campaigns in order to create an effect. I think I saw someone even call out Deliveroo on their Collectoroo campaign.
Yeah, that's right.
Day, right? And it's like, you know, they're obviously using it as a PR stunt because it sounds great that they're doing this for good, but actually they're doing it purely to just collect sales at the end of the day. And, you know, that's what marketing is. People do marketing to obviously increase their bottom line. That's why people do it. So how do you convince a company that their role is also good, that they can achieve with their marketing, and that there is like a purpose for it? Like, because that's what you guys do. Like, it's not just about money. Like, how do you have that conversation with a client?
Yeah, I think it stems from the fact that I think the majority of people do want to do good at the same time as making money, but often they don't understand how they can do those two things together. They feel like there has to be a trade-off. And so having those conversations with businesses is quite a sort of long-term thing as well, because what we tend to find is that we can have really good conversations when we discuss with a client their strategy up front, because we can sort of tease out where their purpose comes from. If they don't particularly have a purpose, we can perhaps tease out some of the more interesting things about the company and what they might be able to do and impact. But also on the longer term sort of scale of things, when we're working with them, let's say on a retainer basis and having regular conversations, we're able to also just challenge things every now and then around, you know, for example, if a company, we had a conversation with the other day, was like, yeah, we're thinking of doing a Black Friday sale. And so we just sort of asked the questions back to them. Okay, but how do you feel about Black Friday? Do you feel that it's really right for your brand and your consumers? And then we had a really good two-way conversation around, yeah, maybe not. And what could we do instead? And all these sorts of things. So yeah, I think, you know, there's going to be some people who just don't want to engage with it, but I think the majority of people are willing to, if they can kind of see that it doesn't have to be all or nothing, that it's part of a journey, that you have this sort of two-way conversation, and that they can get there on a more gradual, comfortable level. And like the example you mentioned, Deliveroo, BrewDog, people are very aware and looking to catch out companies that go big and hard with big sort of PRable messages, but then they're completely, let's say, bullshit underneath. And so that, I think, scares a lot of other good businesses to do the right thing. And yeah, I think you were there actually with us last week when we learned the phrase green hushing. Green hushing is a problem. It's a massive problem, because lots of good people are sort of holding back from doing good things or talking about the good things they're doing, because they're scared that people are going to call them out for not being squeaky clean. But you don't have to be squeaky clean. It's better that we all do something than nothing. It's just don't overstate your claims. That's where the people like BrewDog and Deliveroo go one step too far.
Yeah, I loved that. Like, I couldn't believe that. Green hushing, as in, you know, not shouting out about all the great things that you're doing in terms of sustainability, because you're scared that someone's going to say, well, actually, I saw you, you know, getting a paper coffee cup from Starbucks the other day. You didn't use a reusable cup, therefore you're not sustainable or something. Like, because that's the level it's got to now. People are just happy trying to call people out on everything. And where do you draw the line? And it's really, really difficult. And I was saying this to someone the other day, like, you know, I try to do my part, but at the same time, I'm off to Malaysia in a couple of weeks. I'm not planning to get there by boat or rail. Like, I'm just not going to. I'm gonna get on a plane. But you know, that's okay. But I'm not gonna like just charter a private jet to go over to, like, you know, the next city or something. There's a difference between that, and you know, you've got to be sensible about it. But like you're saying, it's all about, you know, small collectible action, which is obviously how we all met through Pledge. So I want to talk about that now. So what made you kind of join, first of all, what made you kind of join Ecology, and how did you hear about them?
Yeah, so ecology we joined because a little bit, I guess, related to what we discussed before. We knew we wanted to make a positive difference on the environment, but frankly, as a startup at the time who had a million plates to sort of spin, it was like, oh, how can we do that and not sort of completely sidetrack ourselves from the bigger picture of trying to run a fully functioning agency? And so ecology very quickly came up in conversations we had with fellow agency owners as a really good solution for that. Really easy to use, really easy to track what you do, but also really credible in terms of the initiatives, the tree planting, the carbon offset projects that they do. And so that's why we signed up for it, and have been happy to do so ever since.
And there's like, obviously, ecology, like I said, does all the trees and the offsetting, but the Million Tree Pledge is quite a fairly big pledge. And so,
Yeah.
to all these small businesses, because at the end of the day, pretty much everyone who signed up, most of them are small businesses, like, SMEs, all of them for sure. And we're all pledging to plant 1 million trees. That's a lot. That's a big commitment. So that's why I feel like everyone who's involved is really serious about it. And, it's, you can't really call that a PR stunt when like that's a significant part of a company's budget when you're a small company as well. So there are much cheaper PR stunts that I'm sure people could do. So everyone involved seems really passionate about it. And that's what I've noticed with every single pledger we've spoken to. So what was your driving force behind taking this pledge? Because as you said, you're fairly new, it's a big commitment. Like what was it that thought, okay, I want to be part of this pledge?
I think what made the big difference was I think it was when I spoke to Marcus the first time, and something he said to me was quite inspiring, which was around the idea that we can all sign up to ecology and become climate neutral workforces, but actually we all know that the scale of the problem is so big that if all we do is become climate neutral, we're still not going to solve the problem. It's like, what can you do as a business owner or as a business to sort of go 2, 3, 4 steps further and make a really positive difference? And if every business took that same approach, we'd actually have the ability to reverse deforestation, to reverse climate change. So that's the sort of scale of action that's required. And actually, if you don't do that, then, can you comfortably look yourself in the mirror and sort of say to your kids that you did enough when they kind of are crying in 20 years' time about their destroyed planet that you've kind of inherited to them? So I think that was the core underlying motivation for it. And you're right, for a small business, it's a really big commitment. And we did hold back originally. And so what we've done is like many is we've joined a little collective within the collective. So we are part of the agency collective's Million Tree Pledge. So it enables us to partner up with other small, similarly sized agencies and be part of this big drive. Whereas probably at this stage on our own, it would be a bit of a step too far.
I think that's exactly the point, right? Is that the agency collective are a fantastic example of that, where they have already got a community of like-minded agencies who are all in it together anyway. And so they were like, right, we want to do more to help the planet as a collective. And so they've signed up, and now you all can be part of this pledge without having to spend that significant amount of money that would actually be difficult for a small business to be able to do. So, and I think that's it. People don't realize that. People see like, 1 million trees, we just can't afford that. And I was working out that, so we've got a collective forest as well, and we want to collect 10 businesses to do it. Because if you have 10 businesses in this collective forest, we are working out that actually to plant 1 million trees by 2030, it's only going to cost us less than £200 a month to be able to do this.
Right. Yeah.
Like, as part of 10 businesses, that's so affordable for most small businesses. That's less than £200 a month is definitely affordable.
Yeah.
Like, you spend more than that on coffee sometimes, like, people do. So it's like, if you can switch like a couple of your habits you spend on subscriptions and all that sort of stuff, and you switch it and you just plant a few trees every single month, you suddenly, as part of this of your collective forest, can hit 1 million trees and actually, like you said, make a genuine positive impact on the environment. And I just think it's fantastic that people do that, and it's really nice to have so many people who are part of it to be able to do it together with.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And like, it's funny you were saying that Marcus is the one that's kind of done it. I feel like he's the one that's been super passionate, because obviously he's one of the founding members of this, and he is super passionate about it. And I think like he was one that convinced me to join as well. And like just having a conversation with him, you can see that how much it means to him, and you just kind of immediately sold on the idea. And I think it's great.
Absolutely.
And I want to kind of go back to a little bit about what you're talking about marketing, because I was thinking about, you were saying Black Friday, and that's coming up soon, right? That's 2 weeks away. It's, well, less than 2 weeks away, isn't it? It's like in week and a half away, right?
Yeah.
It's very soon. And obviously I've really started to see some early Black Friday deals. Some people get ahead of the time and try to, you know, get people sucked in. So explain to me, as a marketer, and obviously you're kind of just ethical marketing, what is it about, you know, Black Friday and discounting and everything that makes it so unethical and makes you guys want to convince people not to do it? What are the main reasons why?
There's a couple of reasons why. The first one is the manipulation of it to the consumer. So it, like the scarcity stuff we talked about, is ultimately trying to create a feeling of FOMO. So it does create feelings of anxiety, of loss aversion, and can often effectively force someone to make a purchase at a time when they otherwise weren't hoping to make a purchase. The other thing, of course, is that it creates a negative environmental effect, because it just drives consumerism that isn't necessarily there. I should have come prepared with the stat, but I don't have it. But we're doing a LinkedIn post, I know, in a couple of weeks around this, about the amount of plastic that gets thrown away as a result of Black Friday purchases. So, you know, there's a couple of really big problems with it there. But like with the scarcity piece, you know, it's not saying that discounting is always wrong. It isn't. You know, there's perfectly valid reasons for doing discounting, like when you are trying to clear old stock or coming to the end of seasonal ranges, that sort of thing. It's just that this completely man-made sort of date of Black Friday and now subsequently Cyber Monday has been created to be this artificial sales spike, which has all of these unfortunately negative side effects. But I think that the nice thing is that, was to your question earlier around, you know, how soon are people going to move away from this stuff and what have you, we're starting to see, and have seen over the last couple of years, some really nice alternatives to Black Friday. So you might have heard of Giving Tuesday, which is a lovely concept where, you know, businesses and people are encouraged to use the Tuesday after Black Friday to be more of a positive alternative and give to local communities, give to charities that are in need of some support, all that sort of thing. And then also Green Friday. So there's 1 million tree pledger. Actually, I was speaking about this the other day. But a number of companies now are doing Green Friday. So instead of the discount side of buy now, it's almost buy now and we'll give a load more effort towards the environmental crisis by planting a bunch of trees in your name. So, you know, there's positive ways of doing this. And I think ultimately you got to think as well, unless you are a real bargain basement discount brand, how are you ever going to drive value and premiumness and feelings of trust in your brand if you're playing into these sort of very bargain basement, anxiety inducing tactics like Black Friday?
I feel like you said premiumness, which is a really interesting word, because I feel like when I think about the different brands that do Black Friday, a lot of the top end brands still do, like some high end brands do it, but the really, really high end ones don't. So, for example, I think a really good example is Apple. Apple, thought of to be one of the most premium brands out there, right? They pretty damn successful company, and the people who buy their stuff are loyal as hell.
Yeah.
And they don't need to do Black Friday. They don't ever reduce their stuff, like ever, because people still buy it. And I've noticed that with Black Friday, all they do is offer a gift card for themselves. So it's like, buy a MacBook and you get £100 gift card to Apple, and that's as far as they go. So they don't really discount it, they just give the money back to themselves. And it's kind of bizarre, but people still buy it because they're loyal, and they're like, oh, okay, I'll never get 100 quid off, so that's basically like 100 quid off anyway, I'm going to buy from them eventually. And you know, I feel like some of the really top end brands, like, you know, say Chanel, or like, you know, those big, they never discount their clothes or bags or whatever, like, because they just don't need to, because it's just they're sort of like, if you can't afford it, then that you're not our customer, sort of thing. But let's think about the average Joe business, because let's face it, you know, they're not the Chanels and the Apples of the world are not the ones worrying about money. At the end of the day, they have a fair lot of money. Whereas, you know, the small businesses out there are the ones that feel the need to kind of do the Black Friday, because they feel that all their competitors are doing Black Friday. They feel the need that they have to discount their services because it might make people buy more. So what advice is there for them? Because, you know, yes, Giving Tuesday and Green Friday are great examples of what we can do to give back, but at the end of the day, that doesn't help their business make money. And at the end, like, people just still want to make money for their business. As much as everyone wants to do good, you still need to be able to make money, otherwise your business just doesn't exist. So how can people, you know, get involved? Because I'm sure that 99% of e-com brands are going to do a Black Friday discount of some kind, because everyone else is, and they're going to feel like they're not going to maximize, or they're going to miss out this chance, or Christmas sales or January sale, whatever the kind of holiday things are, they're always on it. So how do you solve that for like that because, you know, saying about driving anxiety, but as a business owner, it might drive anxiety to them that they're not part of it, they're getting FOMO because all their competitors are doing it. So how do you deal with that?
I mean, the first thing would be, I'd still challenge back to say, try and hold your value, and don't fall into the trap of doing it just because everyone else is doing it. Because yes, you want to make money, but are you actually making money, or are you just getting a revenue spike, but actually you're not making profit? Because that's one of the big problems with Black Friday. It becomes this sort of loss leader event where you're basically trashing the value of your products just to get some new customers through the door. But then you find that the problem is that those new customers aren't the type of customers that you want anyway, because they're there purely because they are bargain hunting customers, and they're not going to be there in 2 months' time when your product's back at full value and you actually want to start selling some stuff that's going to make you some profit. So that would be the first point. And then the second point would be, okay, if you really want to play in this game, then maybe take the Apple example, and rather than go for pure massive discounts, is go for the value add route. You know, what's the stuff that can make the customer feel really warm and fuzzy about the fact that they've made that purchase at that point, and then you're rewarding them with other lovely gifts, or even if it is money off you at a later date, but make sure that your gift is far more rewarding and keeping them in your ecosystem rather than just being a one-time hit.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. You know, and you're right. Same as, like, you know, because we run service businesses, right? So it's a little bit different, but the same that people get into with services is that they kind of discount their prices. And I think with services, there's more flexibility in terms of pricing in general anyway, because there's not like a price list on the website most of the time, and so you sort of quote as you go, and then people kind of lower their quote in order to win the business. And like you said, you might win that client, but then that client is only there with you because you were cheap, and then they treat you like you're cheap, and then it's like, you know, you can't put your prices up, and we all know that those cheaper clients are actually worse than the higher value clients and the way they treat you, and it's so it's perfectly put there. And I love the added value piece, because I think that with every business, that's what it should be. Like, I prefer to work with, you know, suppliers or buy products from people who, it's all about value. It's like they want to try and create the best experience for the customer, not just cheap, reduce the cost or whatever. It's like, actually, I want to help you. I want to help you achieve your goals, and I want to do as much as possible. So I think I much prefer that idea, and I think that's great. So yeah, I'd like to hope that other people are also doing that in terms of, you know, coming up with value propositions.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen some really good examples of it lately. You we did a few interviews with some business leaders recently for a guide to ethical marketing that we published as a piece of research.
Nice.
And there's a company called Scandinavisk, which is this beautiful sort of luxury fragrance and beauty brand that's inspired by Scandinavian values. And their founder, Sean, told me about how he'd felt so uncomfortable with what he called the sort of heroin hit of Black Friday that he decided to sort of pull back from it, but do so in a way that ensured that they had almost like always on better pricing for their subscribers, so that therefore the valuable sort of trusted customers always felt like they were being looked after. And the people who came in for the short-term hits, they came and went, but if you actually became a genuine customer of Scandinavisk, then you really felt like you were valued, and you got the value adds, you got the better pricing all the time. And I think, so far you've seen that strategy is doing wonders for them.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I feel like you want people to feel like you want the company to feel like they genuinely care about you, and they want customer, and they want you to be part of their journey or whatever it is. Like, it used to be the case when you had a supplier, like I remember, like, every time you'd like call up Sky and be like, okay, I'm leaving, they're like, no, we want you, like, and they'd discount it, which is interesting. But you felt like you would get, well, I don't think they would discount it necessarily, but they'd be like, actually, I'll throw in Sky Movies and Sky Sports all for free and stuff like that. Like, okay, well, if you really want me that badly, like, and you kind of feel special. But I feel like that's lost now. And it is all like, in this sort of market and industry, I think because e-com has grown so big, it feels like people out there are just thinking, oh, I can easily get someone new. Like with the use of like Google ads and Instagram ads and all that sort of stuff, they're like, well, the next customer's just around the corner. So they don't feel like they value their current customers as much, which I think is really bad, because I'm guessing if you look at the stats, the cost of acquiring a new customer is way more expensive than kind of, maintaining, upselling your current customer. So I do think that there's a wrong sort of approach there. And and I think that like with all these negative marketing things, like you've mentioned before, unethical stuff, like where do you think it stems from? Is it just like a level of greed, or just like desperation? Like, because people are consistently doing it, like, and some of them care that they're doing it and feel a bit guilty, but some of them don't. So like, where do you think this attitude is coming from when it comes to marketing?
I think unfortunately it stems from the very short-termist nature of business and how it's become more short-termist. So driven by actually the big businesses who are almost entirely motivated by their quarterly shareholder reports, and therefore the need to show increases in their top line and their bottom line. And so that then trickles down to the marketeers in these businesses to think, right, we need to make sure that this, we're looking a bit low on this quarter, so let's make sure we can up the sales through whatever tactics are necessary. And because you're looking at such a short-term period, that then forces you to think about short-termist spike driving stuff like discounting, Black Friday, etc., etc. And that's then trickled down to smaller businesses as well, because they almost have to, or feel like they have to play that game to be able to compete. And it's just the nature of the environment we're in now. I think it's the things like the Million Tree Pledge and thinking about these bigger picture initiatives are the antidote, because they help people to think more long term and think more about the value that can be driven through that long-term approach. And I think that's perhaps one area where smaller businesses can have an advantage over the big guys, because I've been part of big corporations before and sort of very much become almost disenchanted by how much it's driven by that quarterly shareholder report thing, whereas the smaller businesses that are perhaps family owned, privately owned, all that sort of thing, they can look more long-term and can look at driving long-term value and not have to be driven by quarterly sales targets at the same level. So yeah, I think that's kind of where hopefully the small guys can start to win again.
But I feel like the small guys do consistently feel the pressure, because like when they look out there, like there's everyone always does this, and they naturally do, like, because ads are in your face everywhere. Like, you know, we talked about, you know, not just billboards, but on the tube, like, you know, TV ads, but non-stop on Instagram. Like, you know, Instagram and Facebook, it's just in your face the whole time, your competitor brands. Because, you know, obviously if you've been researching your own brand and doing stuff, like, you're going to be targeted accidentally by your competitors as well. And, you know, they are consistently seeing what they're doing, and they're sort of comparing themselves to their customers and to their competitors. And we hear this all the time, like, oh, X and Y are doing this, we need to do this. And I'm like, no, you don't. That's not right for your brand. But they think because that's what's made them successful, so they try to copy them. I think this is, and you don't know what's going on behind closed doors either with those brands as well, and how unethical they are. And it only comes out later on down the line, like, you know, of all the different things that people are doing, and you know, take all the scams that are going on in the world at the moment. Everyone's talking about it, like, you know, obviously this FTX scandal, all the crypto stuff that's going on, right? People didn't know that this stuff was actually happening, and they looked all legit until something happens and it all comes out. So some of these guys that you're competing against and you're comparing yourself to could also be doing really, really, really unethical stuff that you just don't know behind closed doors. So I feel like, you know, if a brand stays true to its value, then you know that you can do things right. But the problem is, doing things right often isn't the most effective from a marketing perspective. Like, there are like those dirty hacks, and like you said, all the unethical, like, scarcity tactics, and you know, you see some people kind of throwing some money behind ads and promising XYZ but only delivering X, and they get away with it. And, you know, even though, or take even like social media, buying vanity metrics and all this sort of stuff, even though a lot of people do know, loads of people don't know, and they get away with it, and they build up their brand until they actually then can run a legitimate business. So there are so many people who have started a business in this, you know, unethical and dishonest way, that I feel like it's putting pressure on other people. And lots of these small businesses are just desperate to find these quick wins, especially now with the cost of living crisis. So what would you say? What would you be saying some advice for some, you know, business out there? Because obviously, I'm hoping that most businesses will want to do things legitimately, and they want to do, like, you know, have a long-term business strategy that's actually sustainable. But for, like, say businesses do need some quick wins to get them through this weird economic climate that we're in at the moment, what can they do in an ethical way that will help them be able to boost their brand in some way?
I mean, the first thing I say to that is to almost not be led by what your competitors are doing. You know, it's not just, are they doing stuff that's unethical? It's also, are they doing stuff that frankly just doesn't work? Just because you're seeing them do it doesn't mean that it's actually working. They might have a stupid as hell marketing manager who's doing the wrong activity. You just don't know. So be true to yourself and really investigate what your core customers want. What are their tensions? Where are they spending their time? And put your focus on that. And if it feels different to your competitors, it's not a problem if you're actually seeing that it gets traction with the people that you want to reach. And, you know, if there's certain areas where you're seeing loads of activity again from your category or something like that. So say, for example, you're seeing loads of activity in Facebook advertising, but you as a person have a massive problem with all the negative sides of Facebook and what it does to sort of the mental health of people and stuff like that. That is, look to solutions that are going to help you to navigate that in a way that feels more acceptable. So, you know, for example, if you find that your customers spend a lot of time on social media, so you need to be there in order to reach them, but you fundamentally don't agree with social media, you know, there are ways to do it. You know, we both chatted with Nicola Telford last week, who has a platform that effectively enables you to advertise as you normally would on social media, but have a donation giving element attached to it. There's lots of smart ways that you can just like think outside the box, even for some of those areas where you'd normally think, oh, it's just that ethical zero-sum game that I have to be part of, and I can't really do anything about it. But there are things you can do, and you don't always have to do everything that your competitor does.
You don't. But bottom line is, how do they find ways to make money? Because I feel like that's it. Like, that's what are some of the quick fire tips you can give that are ethical but are good for your business and help promote them? Like, what would you suggest, like, in terms of, to give the top 3 tips general for businesses, what would you say they should be doing?
I think the first thing is that there aren't big quick fire tips, because that usually sends you down a rabbit hole.
That's true. A good point.
And that's also why I would say this, and I'm sure you'd fundamentally agree, is why you need to also work with experts who are going to help you look at the bigger picture. Because I always use the analogy, like, you wouldn't go on an exploration with a Swiss Army knife and only use the corkscrew. Right, you need to understand how the full picture works. So that's why you engage with experts who are going to help you to do that. But look, still, it's almost focusing on the core fundamentals of marketing, which is your 4 Ps. Your product, making your product as brilliant, as compelling as possible. The price is, getting the right price, not going too low, not going too high, getting the right price, finding the places that it's going to be where your customers are going to be. So that kind of, there's mental availability of making sure people are aware of it, but also physical availability of making it as easy as possible for them to buy in the places they go. So e-commerce is one, of course it is, but also, where do they go in their sort of physical real lives? Because I'm sure you've noticed as much as we have, that when it comes to tech startup brands, they always start heavy in the digital sphere. But once they reach a certain scale, it's funny how many of them then also go on to do TV advertising, outdoor advertising, end up selling in grocers or the big 4 supermarkets, all that sort of thing. So again, that's a big consideration.
I love how it all comes back down to fundamentals at the end of the day. Like, this
Yes,
sort of, like, when I do think that's a good piece of advice for almost anything, like almost anything in life, is that when you're not sure and it's difficult, go back to fundamentals, back to, but that's why you learn this stuff in school or whatever. Like, when we're trying to start out with marketing, it's like, these are the basics, absolute marketing 101. Like, there's a reason why this is taught, because actually you can refer back to that when you're not sure, and obviously build on it and bigger picture. But absolutely. And I feel Swiss Army knife thing, it just got me envisaging myself with a big backpack and just a bottle of wine, like, going through that's the only thing I could do. Sounds like a good way to trek, to be honest. But great, excited, and absolutely working with experts. And I think the problem is with marketing, it does seem easy. Like, there's certain things that seem, like I said, there's quick wins, and you're right. Like, you call me out, that was probably a really silly question, because actually it defeats the point of what you're saying. Like, those quick wins are actually detrimental to your long-term strategy anyway, so they're probably not quick wins. But I guess that's what I hear so many people coming to me and asking me these things, and I'm just thinking, okay, what would be a quick win? But it's never about that. It's long-term sustainable growth, and that's the only way to actually really run a business. And I think there is too much focus at the moment on growing fast, or, like, getting loads of staff, or getting into the top. Like, I saw everyone talking about the Forbes 30 under 30 and all this kind of stuff. Is that hunger to kind of make it big really quickly? And I think that it's not usually the right thing to do. But actually, I just said sustainable business, and I want to talk about that, because I feel like that term is used so differently. Like, when I've just been mentioning it, I meant in terms of sustainable as a business, in terms of that. But there's now, while we're talking about Million Tree Pledge, there's now, like, obviously the term about being a sustainable business in terms of sustainability and environmental impact. So, and the people are mixing up this sort of terminology now, and it gets very confusing. But what are you guys doing as a small business? Because a lot of people are saying that you know, they want to do good. Like you said, a lot of people out there are trying to do good, but they can't afford it. They just absolutely can't. Like, it's expensive, like, you know, to do certain things. But what sort of things are you guys doing as a smaller agency who, you know, is trying to do good in the world? Like, what things do you do as an agency that other small businesses can also easily impact?
Yeah, so I guess a couple of things. One, obviously, is the Million Tree Pledge, stands for itself. And the other thing that we really like to do is make a difference in sort of communities and have a good social impact. So it's not just about the environment for us. You know, we want to have a really good impact on sort of underprivileged communities, that sort of thing. So one of the things we do as a team is, because we are a remote-based organization, so we meet up as a team physically once a month. And what we do is we tend to have the morning, or after one half of the day is like team meeting to run through sort of status of the business, etc., etc. And then in the afternoon, we'll dedicate it to some form of marketing sprint that we will do for a charity or something like that. And it's really great fun, because it's obviously putting your mind on something completely different, something that is massively needing our expertise. We're only doing it in that afternoon, so it's like forcing you to think really quickly on your feet and obviously interacting as a team. So that's something that we do that we really, really enjoy. And then the other thing, I guess, is that we always, particularly in our early days, less so now that we're having really good conversations with our clients, but in the early days, we struggled with this idea of, right, if we're going to talk about ourselves as being an ethical marketing agency, yes, we're doing stuff with our marketing sprints and ecology membership and stuff, but what can we do that's fundamentally making a positive difference in our actual day-to-day business, in our day-to-day marketing, so to speak? So yeah, we're definitely having those more positive, challenging conversations with clients to make them think about doing the right thing. But also, we've recently now extended into this area of delivering carbon conscious websites. Yeah, very much sort of trying to tackle the problem that the internet is almost this neglected area of pollution. I'm sure you've heard me spout this stat before, but if the internet were a country, it would be the seventh largest polluter in the world, and growing much faster than the rest. So yeah, we recently branched out into that area so that we can help design and develop websites that are going to have a much better carbon impact and still be really fast, really sort of nice on the user experience front too.
Yeah, that's a huge passion of ours too. So I'm glad, and that stat is right on the front of one of Tom Greenwood's sustainable web design websites, and that's like the first thing, and it is such an impactful quote, isn't it? It's like I think it's sixth polluter or something now as well. It's like, it's kind of crazy. It's insane, and I think so many people don't realize what an impact websites have, and it's a huge passion of ours too. So it's great to see more people doing it, and I think that, like, you know, you said like you're trying to educate people to come, and that's what we do too, is like trying to educate more people around this sort of thing. But in terms of, like, I guess, you know, you guys doing that, and I feel like I hear a lot of people saying as well now that they only want to work with companies who are doing something impactful, or they're for good, or so purposeful companies and stuff like that. And you know what, I mean, everyone would love to do that, but unfortunately not everyone is going to have that. So you're going to obviously narrow down who you're working with quite a lot. How much of that do you think is now a sort of PR stunt for people saying that, and how much of it is actually real? Like, because I feel like some people are coming to us saying, oh, they want to do good, but actually they're doing it because they want to announce that they're doing good as opposed to actually doing good. How much of that do you see?
Yeah, I think there's a real mix, as much as 50-50, maybe even more on the side of people doing it because they see the commercial benefit, to be fair. But I know there are a lot of agencies and businesses who will literally stop them at the door for that straight away. But our feeling on this is almost, well, as long as there's a genuine sort of desire to improve, then we want to help you improve. Because that's almost more satisfying to us than if a company that comes through the door and is like B Corp and already squeaky clean in almost every area and just wants someone to help them promote that message. It's almost like, okay, well, yeah, we can do that, but that's fine. But if we can help someone improve and go along a journey, then that feels far more rewarding.
How would you do that? Because I feel like, you know, yes, obviously there's some people who are on the edge and they don't know about it, and you can obviously help them find out more about it. But what about those that, you know, you feel that maybe are just doing it for PR purposes and have no intention of actually doing anything good? Because I've written to some people. So, for example, one of the things that we did is write to all our clients, anyone we've ever worked with, pretty much, and said, we would like to buy you a forest of 250 trees to start off with, and it's all a gift from us. And then obviously you can utilize that forest and plant it. And loads of people wrote back to go, no thanks. And I'm just like, why would you decline like us planting trees on your behalf? Like, even if you never use it, that's 250 extra trees that have been planted because you said yes. Like that is all you need to say. And I'm like, no thanks, I don't see the point. And a lot of people have said that to me. They just don't see the point. They go, oh, it's not going to be me that's affected. And I was like, yeah, but your kids and your grandkids and whatever affected, I'll be dead by then, doesn't matter. And there's a lot of that attitude out there. So how do you fundamentally change that attitude?
I'll be honest, I don't think we can. If they're that entrenched and that dinosaur in their opinion, then that's probably the line that I would draw and say, no, we're not the right company for you.
So who are you currently working with anyway, and what type of brands do you want to work with?
So we've got a really lovely mix at the moment. So we've got a bunch of professional services who are deliberately wanting to sort of stand out from the crowd with being, you know, slightly more, for example, an executive search firm who pride themselves on placing more diverse candidates than others. We've got an electric karting series we're working with, which is lovely. They're great because not only do they run a series that's on sustainable energy use, but also their whole mission is around creating a more equal and inclusive sort of world of motorsport. As you may or may not know, it's an incredibly elitist world where you can't really get into the higher echelons of anything like F1 unless you've got a very wealthy parents that are going to fund you through expensive petrol karting and stuff. So that's there to sort of tackle that. And then we also work with some more, what I would call almost like legacy clients. So a big estate up in Scotland who, you know, they've been around for centuries, but have always had, funnily enough, sustainable ways of living and running the estate as core to their DNA. Because ultimately, if they didn't act that way, it wouldn't still be in the great state that it is now as it was 300 years ago. So a real nice sort of diverse mix. And, you know, ultimately that we just want to work with businesses that have that kind of good value fit, want to do good things, and want to kind of learn and improve as they go.
That's brilliant. I like that. And at least, like you see, you've got the fundamental values at the core of all of those things, which is, and that's what I think that everyone should be. I guess I want to finish off with talking more about the Million Tree Pledge, and like, you know, since you joined, you guys are quite new, but since you've joined, what do you think, just so that other people who either haven't heard of it or just checking it out, like, what have been the benefits for you so far, and what do you foresee that the benefits are going to be about being part of this community?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's a community, so you obviously get to meet lots of other like-minded individuals, and you know there's going to be plenty more sessions like this today, which are great. But also, you know, there's lots of great networking events that are part of it, and we were on one just a few weeks ago, weren't we? Which was in a lovely location outdoors in Brighton, and we got to do lots of tree hugging and stuff like that. So it's just a really nice way to sort of meet fellow-minded business leaders and share ideas. Really, I think if you want to make a positive difference, then this is a really, really good community to be part of.
Yeah, that event was so good. We was like Brighton, sunny day, surrounded by trees and plants, and it was gorgeous. And like you said, you know, the like-minded people, but being part of that day was just so inspiring. Like everyone there wanted to make a positive impact on the world, wanted to do good stuff for other people, wanted to spread the word about all of this sort of stuff, and it was just, you absorbed everyone's positive and, you know, ethical energy around you in a way. Like, you know, it was just incredible being around all those people. So I think, yeah, that for me as well is also my favorite thing about it. And so yeah, that's probably why I love it too. And I'm super glad that we're kicking off this series now, this Meet the Pledger series. So thank you so much for being the first one in the series.
My pleasure. It's been fun. I enjoyed it.
It's been so good. And next week we've got Ecology themselves who are coming on to talk about why, you know, obviously, and all the amazing projects they've been funding, and you know, how what we've all been helping fund as well, and how it all works. So, and then every week we've got people signed up, you know, till the end of the year and into next year. So it's just a great community with so many pledgers now. So we're just going to learn about from everyone's business and just keep it going, really.
Brilliant. Sounds great.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much today. And it was great to hear more about ethical marketing, and maybe really think about, you know, thinking about advising clients and what tactics to use, and, you know, not to use tactics, I suppose, and it's like think about the more sustainable growth and staying true to their brand. So thanks for today, Chris.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.